I was a child of the 80s. I grew up loving those classic coming-of-age tales. Those films always evoked three key responses: wonder, laughter, and tears. They would take you to worlds and experiences that you'd never seen before, and they really would kindle that side of your imagination. To be able to tell that kind of a story, to be able to take this huge canvas that Michael and the team have built over the last decade, and to focus in on a tiny corner of that canvas and tell something that's more intimate, more character-driven, and more evocative of those great classic coming-of-age stories of the 80s, that was something that was really exciting to me.
I'm a kid of the 80s and I love the 80s. Transformers feels so rooted in the 80s.
Otis, look at me. I'll be right back, okay? If you die while I'm gone, I will kill you. Do you hear me?
The 80s has a very specific flavor, which is great for filmmaking purposes because there is a look that people recognize.
Travis does a great job in channeling the way we relate to characters from like our favorite 80s period movies that we know and love. It's very wholesome.
Come on, live a little, people.
We weren't really trying to find a town that looked 80s or 70s. We just wanted to find a town that felt timeless. Like, probably it wasn't a lot different today than it was in the 1980s.
We started looking at Marin County, and originally we were looking for an exterior location where we would just build a garage onto an existing house, and then we just could not find a house that would accommodate that. And we found an empty lot in Marin County and the kind of neighborhood that seemed appropriate for the characters and for Charlie. And we ended up building a complete exterior with a complete garage.
Yeah, I can't right now, sorry.
No.
All of our sets on these movies are giant construction projects. The art design, the props, the detail was extraordinary, and I think part of that is to convey the time period, but it's not like we're zooming in on any of those particular things. It's all part of selling the 80s without being overt.
It's really fun when you're bringing this world to life that doesn't exist anymore, and I think with world building, so much of it comes down to the details. You take your wash over everything, and this is generally what it looks like, but when you really get down to make the world feel authentic and lived in, you gotta get down to the detail. All right, it's nice when you guys have these little eruptions of laughter. So every single tiny thing, they have to be thought about. And how does this prop, how does this set, how does this relate to the characters and what they're going through? And you make choices. And a lot of us, we just went back to our own childhoods. We went back to our own experiences in that era and brought so much of ourselves to it.
That was one of the most elaborate sets. I mean, you literally could have lived in that house.
So as we come into the garage, her dad's old, sort of den of sorts, where his record collection, TV, VHS, this would be where it was happening. As well as the car, the Corvette that they both bought together in hopes of putting together for her 16th birthday.
For me, there are a couple of sets that are special to me. The two biggest ones are Charlie's bedroom and Memo's bedroom that feel like they are versions of my own bedroom from that era. And there were a couple of props specifically, and I'm not gonna tell you what they are because it's too embarrassing. It was kind of like a little nerd wonderland going back and thinking about our childhoods and how we could give specificity to these characters so they felt real. And part of that is just bringing yourself to it. And I think a lot of the crew members, including Guillaume, our property master, who did an exceptional job, and Sean, our production designer, going back and thinking about where you were, who you were in that era, and trying to bring those elements into the film, it gives it a realness.
Travis and I had many conversations about the scope of the film and the particular period. Now, he and I are about the same age, and so we were teenagers in the 80s. And his background in animation make for a very detail-oriented director who really enjoys the nitty-gritty, all the props, all the little things. When you're in animation and stop motion, which is what he did, you have control over absolutely everything. So here he had to trust me with that control, and I had to translate to him exactly what we were going to do. So he's a great director for this sort of film because of his attention to detail. It's a period film. You have to have a lot of research put into it. And the process of prepping this film with him was phenomenal.
Welcome to Sector 7. You're welcome to use all of our technology here.
We had a pretty amazing triumvirate in Tina and Kelvin and Dana in terms of like bringing to life the look of the 80s in this film.
We sort of decided really early on that it's an 80s movie, so it had to look a certain way, but it didn't have to be shoulder pads and craziness, you know, it had to be true and rooted in the period, but we were telling a story, and that was the important thing. Before our first meeting, we pull pictures and do images, and there were certain things that he really liked. He loved the Joan Jett of it all. He loved the Deborah Harry of it all. He loved like the rock influence that we were thinking about doing for Haley. You know, she has to stand out. She has to have her own look, fit into the period, but in some ways she isn't fitting in with everybody else. There's something different about her. So we gave her like a little rock edge and a darker palette, because everything else is poppy and fun and bright, and she's not. She has dark jeans, and she's got some greens, and she has, you know, a lot of black, where nobody else is really wearing any of that in this movie.
You like my shirt? Are you a metal fan?
I talked to my mom, actually, a lot about 80s fashion and trends, so to speak, hair and makeup. She was with me in a lot of my fittings at the beginning, and it was like a trip down memory lane for her. Charlie dresses sort of toned down a little, I wouldn't necessarily say cooler, but she just doesn't go the whole 9 yards.
Our approach to the 80s was to treat it sympathetically and to treat it sincerely, and there's absolute love in it. You can see it in the production design, in the costumes, in the hair and makeup. You can hear it in the soundtrack and the music that we're using. It was a real place, it was a real time, and we wanted to make sure it did not feel like we were lampooning it, that it was a cartoon. And so we treated it seriously.
Nice outfit. Let me guess. Cry for help?
One of the things that was really cool for me was doing location scouting on this film because, you know, working in animation, you don't do that. I've shot all my films at Leica in a big warehouse, and so you don't find a location, you design and you build a location. But of course, you can't get poison oak and you can't get stung by bees, which we did when we went on location. But that was one of the cool things working with J.J. Hook, who helped us find all the locations in the film, was that we wanted to try to use the sets and the locations as ways that we could reflect what the characters are going through emotionally.
Henry Cowell State Park, which hasn't been shot for years, was such a fantastic, magical location. It doesn't have quite as many big trees as the Muir Woods, but it's definitely comparable as far as I'm concerned, and hardly anybody really knows it's there.
We are in the redwood forest right now, and it's absolutely unbelievable. This is the first thing I've seen all day. And it's a tree that's over 2,000 years old, and it grows 6 feet every year, I think they said, which is insane. It's gorgeous. It smells amazing out here. It's beautiful. Go nature.
I remember when we found that redwood forest, I'd never been to a redwood forest before, and when I saw those trees, it really took my breath away. You know, you see a lot of stuff, but when you can see these incredible 3,000-year-old trees, it's really something to behold. It made my jaw drop, and once we found that location, it was just stunning.
A big part of this movie will be the authenticity of California, so we wanted to get that right, and we didn't want it to be a distraction either.
And action.
You're 7 minutes late.
It's 9 o'clock in the morning, okay? Pretty sure there's not a whole lot of people looking for a wiener at this hour.
Trying to find the perfect location for Charlie and her high school job in a way that we could evoke, you know, the life and the fun that everyone else around her is having, that she is stuck in this little prison. I thought, look, let's have this location be at a boardwalk.
We're here in Santa Cruz at the boardwalk, which the art department did an amazing job to transform us back into 1987. But if you came here on our initial tech scouts, you almost don't have to do too much because it's that romantic. It is that era.
So when we first got to Santa Cruz Boardwalk, Sean Hallworth, the production designer, scouted out this location, which was originally a hot dog on a stick way, way back in the day. So we had 2 graphic designers working on this project, Ellen Lample and Emily Roth. And they painstakingly recreated all of the original graphics from Hot Dog on a Stick and all the original pricing. And our set decorator, Ann Colgan, came in, and we had these lemonade stands made. Props came in with the food. And we are now an official 1980s hot dog on a stick.
Can't we just sell the hot dogs without the sticks?
No. The churro cart is an original from scratch thing specific to our story that our researcher, Lizzie Klein, had found some great reference of historical carts on this actual boardwalk, and we based the design off that. The graphics itself, we tried to mirror what you see as our Brighton Falls boardwalk signs and color palette. The churros were then brought in, they're real, and they were brought in by the prop department the morning of the shoot.
My favorite thing about Santa Cruz was they had such a wide variety of looks that you really got to span the whole of the 80s. We had punk kids, we had surfer kids.
That's when we got to actually show some of those bigger 80s looks because there was a lot of background, and so we got to play a little bit more.
My first day on set was in Santa Cruz at the boardwalk, and I was blown away. It was beyond anything I'd imagined. They transformed the entire boardwalk. It was like stepping back in time, and seeing the extras dressed for that boardwalk day was hilarious. Who doesn't love a mullet?
I drive a bright orange Datsun 240Z, and it's a hot little number, I must say.
Transformers are sort of synonymous with car culture, so it felt like it was very important for us to try to capture this moment in time. It's not just, cars that were from 1987, it's, cars that go back beyond that.
Usually, when you're doing a modern-day picture, the sort of mechanics are simple because so many of those cars are around. But when you're doing a period thing like this, you've got those cars from the 80s and the 70s and even further back. A lot of those cars don't exist, so it's tough to find them, for one. And then the people who own them, we threw some older shirts and some mustaches on them, and now they're driving in 1987. So it's a little bit more difficult because those car owners aren't necessarily experienced. They haven't done these movies every weekend like we usually do back in LA with modern cars. But you come up here to Northern California, you find the cars, you find the people, they get excited. Everybody gets a radio in their car, and you throw together an intersection, and then the whole thing comes to life.
Morning, Mrs. Calloway. Beautiful weather, isn't it?
And you're such a suck-up, Otis.
This particular location is the scene of a big classic 80s bonfire party. And so whether they're driving new cars or maybe cars that are, secondhand or third-hand or their parents' cars, we wanted to capture that, probably that, 10, 15-year period between, 1970, 1972, and 1987. And so you find a lot of the classic cars, the kind of cars that kids drove when I was in high school. And, you got the great Mustangs, you got Woodies, you got Pintos, you got, all kinds of cool stuff. It really does feel like I stepped into a time warp when I walked on this set. The Shaggin' Wagon. Yeah, everyone is drawn to that for some strange reason. That was the vehicle that we were told to stay away from when I was a kid. But now, as an adult, I'm drawn right to it. I don't know what that says about me. There's something about orange shag carpet on the walls of a van. It was pretty awesome.
I feel jealous that I didn't get to grow up in the time where I could run around in one of these muscle cars that they have on set. Everything's just so boring nowadays. Cars used to have character.
You're telling me you could have been a Camaro this whole time?
3, 2, 1, go!
So we have this big, third act action sequence, and we wanted to find a location that could do it justice. And because she lives in a coastal town, it felt natural to have it at a marina or a dock. And we found this place that was just cool. It was this old naval yard that they built, ships in World War II at Mare Island. And the architecture, the bones of this place was just stunning. It just looked so cool. And what's more, the dry dock where they would repair and assemble these ships, when it's drained of water, it looks like a gladiator pit.
The second we saw it, we thought, what a fantastic place for a bunch of robots to be knocking the crap out of each other.
We actually end up designing some of the action sequences around the shipyard. For instance, the dock was another of those things. When we realized we could flood it, we end up making that a major part of the third act. But it was all a discovery as we got there.
These cranes that are around us add a lot of texture. There's a lot of history here that adds a lot of texture. Having all that to put our CG characters into just roots everything in reality so much more.
call it the Bay Buster, an homage to Michael Bay. and the reality of this is the Bay Buster's acting like one of the robots is being tackled, so we have debris, and it just gives us bigger impact and bigger dynamic action.
I don't even know where to begin. I am running for this tower to save Bee. At this point, Charlie's doing anything and everything she can to save him and keep him safe and keep him alive, as well as keeping herself alive. It feels so real. Stuff's flying, things are on fire. It's good, it's great.
It's amazing. Maybe the coolest thing I've ever done.
Yo, the explosions.
Came here for the
they were like, the PA was like, it's not that big of an explosion. And then you go in and you're like, yeah. Ah.
So the Golden Gate Bridge was the perfect ending for the movie. It felt like a romantic place to say goodbye. It had the kind of beauty and scale that created a perfect bookend for Charlie and Bumblebee.
You know, one of the great things about all the Transformers world is we go to pretty spectacular places, and obviously we've got the wonderful Golden Gate Bridge behind us in San Francisco, just off over here, and we're thankful that all the people that supported us to get up here, because this is not an easy place to allow shooting, and so I think the local community went out of their way to help us.
Oh my God, yeah, the Golden Gate Bridge overlook was like, here we are, here's our location. This is awesome. That the backdrop is not only the Golden Gate Bridge, but like we could touch it from where we are. It was so incredible.
We shot the end of the movie at Battery Spencer with 150 of our closest tourist friends.
As you can see out here, there's not much space and there's tons of tourists, and the park's not gonna let us shut it down for all the tourists and all the visitors. So that we squeezed in a little 85-person film crew and about 17 trucks into this one little slice of pie here.
A place like this, even, you know, we imagined it originally as kind of a beautiful, kind of romantic moment in incredible golden sunlight reflecting off of the water. Well, you know, we got some bluster. We got some gale force wind. I think maybe a hurricane is coming in off the coast. But the thing about this particular location is even when the weather does not cooperate, it's still incredibly beautiful. I think that really does evoke what we're going for in this scene.
Yeah, that was great. Picture is up. Picture, let's go.
Shooting in California in general has been an absolute dream. I am born and raised in LA. So to be able to spend time in these places that are so close to home was really incredible. I questioned why I had never been to all these places before, but I'm so lucky that this film has brought me there.
Around the world, people think of California as a special place and has a connotation in their heads. It's something they aspire to, something they want to see, and we wanted to be able to show people that kind of classic California thing, and I think we got it here.
It was an extraordinary experience. I've done a lot of stuff in my career over the 20 years I worked in animation and film, but this last year working on Bumblebee, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life.